Hello, and welcome to A Bettor Morning, presented by Rival Fantasy. I'm Heather Klein. Rival Fantasy is the all-in-one fantasy sports platform. We debate the trending topics in sports from a sports betting point of view. Let's welcome today's panel. Award-winning host, the fantasy exec, Corey Parson.
Yay!
Host of Her Story in the Making, Britt's Fantasy Blitz, and co-host of Lightning Round, Britt Flynn. Senior Manager of Content for Fantasy Alarm and host of Quick Out Fantasy Football Show and Fantasy Alarm DFS shows, John Impemba. Welcome, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm good. Busy day, exciting stuff. We've got the first ever college football FSGA draft that we're broadcasting later tonight. It's going to be a wild day. I'm excited.
And
that MLB Trade Deadline day, big day there.
And that draft is like the rosters is deep though, right?
Yeah, it's 30 rounds.
Yeah, I can't do 30 rounds.
And 18 teams.
I'll be drafting people from state. I can't do it. I'm not going to be able to do that. Almost John Moran at y'all. Sorry. I'm just saying,
Don't worry.
Just moving stuff around this area. This, you know what I mean? My bad.
Oh my gosh. All right. Bengals QB Joe Burrow will miss several weeks due to a right calf strain. The National Football League officially kicks off in 37 days. I know we're getting excited about that. This time last year, almost to the day, Burrow missed 19 days because of an appendectomy, and they started off the season 2-3. Are you concerned about the missed time by the Cincinnati signal caller? And do you worry about the potential of re-injury? John, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, listen, I don't think I'm too worried about re-injury here. This is a situation where it's a calf strain. They're obviously going to keep him off of it and make sure that it's healed up correctly before he gets ready to go. But in terms of worry about any sort of rustiness or it impacting the way the Bengals get off, I don't think so at this point. They have enough chemistry with that team. He has enough experience at this point where he knows the offense. The players know him. They know what they're going to do. So I don't find this to be a thing where if Burrow has to miss a few weeks of camp, then it's going to go out and just impact how the Bengals start off their year this year. So no, I'm not really too worried about the injury in itself. The team doesn't seem too worried about it, and the Bengals should be a team ready to roll this year.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about him this year as I was last year. Looking back on it, the Bengals actually had some pretty tough defensive matchups to start the 2022 season. They had the Steelers in their secondary, the Cowboys, and then the Jets as their first three games. And we all wanted to talk about this Super Bowl hangover that Burrow had, but I think he just had some pretty tough matchups. This year, they kind of have it a little bit easier. They've got the Browns, Ravens, Rams, Titans, and Cardinals, who have a liability in one way or the other in the secondary. So I think he'll be in a much better position this season than last year. John mentioned the chemistry's already there. Don't think we have to worry about that. But as far as the risk of re-injury, that is something to watch. Calf strains have one of the highest risk of re-injury or aggravation if it's not managed properly. So the Bengals really do have to exercise a ton of caution to make sure they preserve their franchise guy. Again, nothing really changed with the receiving core. Let's just focus on Burrow getting healthy.
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways I look at this. If I'm a Cincinnati Bengal fan from a pure NFL standpoint, I'm not worried because we've seen the Bengals get better down the stretch of the last two seasons. So if they start off slow this year, we know they have the capability to get better as the season goes on. Now, as far as the injury itself, yeah, I'm a little bit worried because a calf strain, not all the time, but a lot of times the calf strain can be a gateway or a signal that a ruptured Achilles is coming, i.e. Kevin Durant. So I worry about it a little bit in that sense of it. Now, what I really worry about, though, is my Burrow, Jamar Chase stacks. And, as far as my MVP tickets, I thought Burrow was going to have that kind of season this year. I thought Chase was going to be a guy that could have been the offensive player of the year. A slow start could throw that off.
Yeah, I'm with you with the Burrow stacks because we've all been drafting a ton of leagues. I took Burrow as my QB1 in a super flex, and like 2 rounds later was when this injury happened. So I'm scrambling to try to fill that roster spot and make sure that he's ready to go for week 1. But something that is kind of puzzling to me is the fact that the win totals haven't really gone down.
Yeah, and
yet.
they're still favored to win the division.
Yeah, they're still sitting at like 11 and a half games, I think, and they're favored to win. So that to me tells me that something behind the scenes is good news for Burrow. But I'm still just nervous about it because I'm way too overexposed to.
I just don't think the expectation is that it's gonna impact him enough where it's gonna miss any games to start the year. So Vegas isn't gonna overreact, and as soon as they even drop that half a win, the people would be all over the over on that. So unless he was going to miss actual game time, they're not gonna touch the odds. In my opinion.
But maybe not touch the total, but the division, especially a division with Baltimore in it, and Baltimore fully healthy is just as good as Cincinnati.
Sure.
So that's the part to me that's a little bit awkward to say the least. And like you said, would make me think that they know something we don't. I'd be careful, but really, I'll be honest with you. Where do we go to next? Are you still comfortable with the Burrow Chase stack? Or because see me, the next one I do, next tournament style draft or auction I think I'm going to Jackson and Andrews. You know what I'm saying? And who is ideal backup if you already have Burrow?
Yeah, I ended up getting Brock Purdy because at this point it was a super flex. Everybody was basically gone at that point in the draft. There's not really a great ideal backup spot. But the sharp drafters, we did the FFPC pros versus Joes last night. Burrow fell to like the 5th or 6th round. His ADP is already falling quite a bit, which is concerning on that end. It's 2 ends of the spectrum, right? Vegas says he's fine. Drafters are very concerned about him.
Yeah, it feels like an overreaction to me to see him drop that much. That seems a little crazy.
Yeah.
Did that calf strain don't bother you at all, though, John? You know what I'm saying? Knowing that the calf strain is a gateway to a ruptured Achilles?
I mean, not really. I mean, sure.
Non-contact calf strain?
Well, I mean, it's a pulled muscle, right? Like, we've all seen people running around and have something kind of cramp up on them. You don't know the situation that initially caused it. And the team can be playing coy about it, obviously. You know, they said he's going to miss a couple of weeks, but a lot of that you have to assume is just precautionary, right? There's no reason for Joe Burrow to be out there and push himself during these training camps because he's already their established guy. He probably wasn't going to play much, if at all, during the preseason games. You know, like there's no reason to not wait this out for Burrow to be healthy, right? They don't need to push him. He knows the offense. He knows what they're trying to do. So I'm not really concerned. Now, if we get closer to week 1 and they're like, yeah, he's still a little gimpy and he's not out there practicing, then my flags will raise a little bit. But at least as I stand right now, I'm not changing anything in my opinion on Burrow in this offense.
Britt, where did Chase go in pros versus Joes?
I believe he went 3rd or 4th.
Okay, so
he's still going pretty high.
Yeah.
And another thing, there's 2 things actually. I don't think that we'll see a lot of Burrow regardless because of his contract issue. They're trying to get him signed to a big deal. I don't think he wants to risk that. The second thing is that they stuck with Trevor Siemian as a backup. And instead of signing like Carson Wentz or anybody else, they brought in this XFL guy who didn't even play last season. So if they were truly concerned about him missing games, I think that they would have brought in a little more depth to their quarterback room, and they haven't done that. So that's good news.
All right, guys. Today marks the MLB Trade Deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern. Outside of Max Scherzer, there has not been too many jaw-dropping deals. What are you hoping to see prior to the deadline today? Britt, you're up first.
So I would really like to see Justin Verlander go to the Orioles. If they're going to make a run in the postseason, they really need to bring in some backup on the mound because their starting rotation is kind of lackluster, to say the least. That's being a little charitable. I know that Verlander got off to a rough start, But since June 26th, he's really cleaned it up. He's got a .149 ERA and an opponent batting average of 178 in the 7 starts since that time. And good pitching is something that the Orioles desperately need. And I'm a fan of seeing underdogs shake things up. I would also like to see Dylan Cease go anywhere. Please get him out of the cesspool that is the Chicago White Sox. But honestly, the Dodgers are on my radar. Get out of Chicago, go to a competitive team, and help LA round out their rotation and possibly bring home a World Series.
When it comes to trade deadline day, I think you kind of know, obviously, the big names. Ohtani, they said they're not doing nothing. That's yet to be determined. Britt mentioned Verlander. We've already seen Scherzer. But I think it's interesting to kind of nerd out and look at the other side. Who are some of the prospects that are going to be included in this deal? You know what I'm saying? What does their future look like? And, why is the team risking this guy to go ahead and make a championship or to try to rent a player to win a championship? So, we can kind of well say that the Orioles been picking up these prospects for years. That's why they're in the position that they're in now. So look at the team and, kind of look at it from the other side and see what these prospects that are going to be coming back to these teams after they move on from some of these players that could be championship rentals. So I guess that'd be about the deepest I get into trade deadline today. Maybe if the Yankees do something, I don't know, bring back, Dave Winfield. I don't know. There's really not too much you can do in the Bronx. So it's just whatever. You know what I'm saying? Training camp live.
Yeah, I mean, as a Red Sox fan here, I'll speak from my perspective. I would like the team to do absolutely anything. Excuse me. At this point, they're 2.5 games out of a wild card spot. Division's probably out of reach at this point. They're 9 games back, but crazier things have happened over the final 2 months of an MLB season. Their farm system just got ranked in the top 5 of all of baseball. Chaim Bloom was brought in as the GM a few years ago to really rebuild and restock that farm system, but eventually you got to turn those prospects into players that can help you win at the major league level. We've seen some of those guys start to come around and do that. Tristan Casas has been one of the hottest hitters in baseball since the All-Star break. Ryan Bayo has pitched really well. He's on the mound for them here tonight. But they have a really loaded farm system, and bringing in a name that could come and help the actual MLB roster right now, whether it be a back-end starter or maybe a right-handed bat for the outfield, could do wonders for them.
Corey makes a good point about bringing up prospects and prospects that could be traded. This is kind of off topic, but who I want to see come up is Orioles prospect Heston Kjerstad. I mean, they've got 2 of their center fielders on the IL, and Kjerstad has absolutely been killing it in AAA. He's batting a .342. He has a 10.23 OPS, only an 18.9% strikeout rate. If they're really looking to do something, that's what they should do. Don't worry about trading for somebody. Bring up Kjerstad and get another outfielder who can hit the ball like crazy and put in your lineup.
Yeah, they've done really well calling up some of their younger players this year to contribute right away for them. And they have the best prospect in all of baseball, and Holiday, number 1 ranked prospect, kind of storming his way through the minor leagues. Could see him as early as next year. I don't know if he would be part of any deal. It probably would have had to have been the Ohtani trade, but since he's not going anywhere, I think the Orioles' top prospects like Grayson Rodriguez, Holiday, and Gunnar Henderson are pretty safe here with their build moving forward. So it would be interesting to see what they would have to give up to get a rental in Verlander, but I can't imagine it'd be any of their top 5.
You a Red Sox fan? Oh, my bad. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is it just me, or has this been one of the slower trade deadlines that we've seen in the MLB, like over the past few seasons? It's been kind of lackluster.
They extended the deadline hours. So usually the trade deadline's at 4 p.m. Eastern time. It's at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So I don't know if that's giving some general managers slightly less pressure to make some deals. But there have been some trades. I mean, like I said, we've already seen Scherzer dealt. Right, that's usually a guy you would think maybe would be dealt on deadline day, not a couple days prior. But some of the bigger names we thought maybe were going to move, they didn't move. Right, Ohtani not moving. The Cubs have said they're not trading Cody Bellinger. The Cardinals have said they're not trading Nolan Arenado. Those are big names that many people thought might have been on the move today or the last couple of days that were taken off the market. Leaves guys sort of starting to scramble. So we're seeing some smaller names move right now. Things will heat up today as the pressure goes on some of these general managers to get things done.
I'll find out from Scott Van Pelt tonight.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. Terrence Bud Crawford dominated Errol Spence Jr. to secure the undisputed welterweight title. Bud led this highly anticipated, years-in-the-making fight from beginning to end as he knocked down Spence 3 times in rounds 2 and 7. Errol has already stated that he'll definitely exercise his contractual right to an immediate rematch, but they would be fighting at the junior middleweight limit of 154 pounds, and Crawford would have to relinquish his belts. With the one-sided fight and what was supposed to be more of an even competition, do you feel that Spence needs to hang up his gloves and consider retirement? Or you're up first.
Errol Spence still a pretty young dude, you know what I'm saying? And don't get me wrong, he got beat up pretty bad on Saturday night. I sat here and watched it, you know what I'm saying? And I was rooting for Errol Spence. Errol Spence is from Dallas, by the way, of Long Island. You saw Stephen Jones sitting ringside. Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons was in the hotel. Big Dallas Cowboy contention came out there to root for him, and they all left very sad. Now, yesterday, Stephen A. kind of was the one that alluded to Spence needing to retire. I wouldn't go that far. He had a bad day, obviously, in the second round. You saw that the power of Bud Crawford was going to be a little bit too much for Spence to handle. But I'm not going to write the kid off and say his career is over or that he needs to retire. There was some reports that he has some neurological damage. None of that has been, substantiated. So I would say that, Spence bounced back. Now, I would not rematch this. I wouldn't trigger the rematch because you can get beat up again. I think if I was Crawford, I would stay at 147 and fight the kid Bots or Boots. He's supposed to be the next one. But a rematch at 154 would just be another beatdown for Spence. There's no reason to do that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, our guy over at Fanslam, James Grande, is a huge boxing guy. He was really hyped about this fight. He thought it was going to be a really back and forth matchup, and then we go and see Crawford just absolutely dominate it, start to finish there. I don't think Spence needs to retire, as maybe Stephen A. had alluded to there, but, first loss of his career, wants to go back up and weight and have Crawford kind of fight him at the weight that he's comfortable fighting. That's fine, but there are certain guys at levels that you just can't get by. I like to watch MMA. Daniel Cormier was one of the best, light heavyweight fighters there was. Couldn't beat John Jones. Just couldn't do it. Would beat everybody else in the division. Could never beat John Jones. John Jones when it came down to it. There are just some guys you can't get by, but you can still have a great career.
Yeah, I think the retiring is a little silly. I mean, one bad fight, that doesn't call for retirement. But he does need to schedule some fights against people not named Crawford. And that's why a rematch does not make any sense at all. When you're beaten that bad and you've clearly lost a little bit of a step, moving up a weight class definitely isn't going to fix anything. He was outmatched at every single step of the game. And he said that he was off, but being off doesn't account for that bad of a beatdown. Crawford showed that he was the better fighter outright, and a rematch isn't going to narrow the gap. Spence thinks that moving up a weight class would be better for him, but I'm hard-pressed to think that it would fix any of those deficiencies he showed. Like Corey said, he's just going to get beat worse. And it would be very hard from a bottom dollar standpoint to generate excitement for this fight because that beatdown was so bad. And at the end of the day, it being a pay-per-view event, that is the one thing that you need is excitement.
Yeah, I'm not shelling out another $85 if they was to fight again. You know what I'm saying? I'm not paying for that joint because who wants to watch that? You know what I'm saying? But but in typical Dallas Cowboy fashion, the whole team goes out there to watch a guy from Dallas. It's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? So, but I don't see where rematch is a thing here. I don't see a rematch for this one right here.
No, and it wasn't even just him getting beat up bad. The fact that he got knocked down 3 times. If it was MMA, okay, sure, I can deal with that. That's part of the game. But in boxing, getting knocked down 3 times, that's a bigger red flag as you're going to find.
Yeah.
I don't even know if we have anything more to say on this. Just like, hey, bro, don't go fight Crawford again.
Right.
Well, obviously the ringside wasn't as star-studded as a lot of these ringsides be. This was kind of built as like a fight of the decade, but I didn't see, the celebrities come out. I mean, the main person in the screen, the majority of the fight was Stephen Jones, you know what I'm saying? So, it's like Stephen Jones sitting next to Busta Rhymes always looks crazy, you know what I mean? But, hey, shout out to Stephen Jones. He came out and showed his love, you know what I'm saying? But bad look for Spence.
Yeah, 100%.
Now that it's that time again, dealer's choice. Give us your bet of the day. It could be on any topic and any sport. John, you're up.
Yeah, I'm going to get a little aggressive here. We're going to go with a home run prop for the show today. We're going to go with Ryan Mountcastle over half a home run here. They're in Toronto. Great hitting environment. Gets them out of the Oriole Park there, Camden Yards, where they really have done a detriment to his power numbers. And Mountcastle this year is hammered left-handed pitching. Toronto is having Hyunjin Ryu make his debut today. He's coming off of a Tommy John surgery, left-handed pitcher. If you look at the road splits versus lefties for Mountcastle this year, he has a 500 isolated power number, which is absolutely insane. Tremendous WOBA, just a great matchup for him here in a great ballpark environment. He's plus 500 to homer today, so you'll get 5-1 in your odds. We're going to go Mountcastle to homer as our pick today.
I love that, John. That's spicy. Plus 500. I'm going to have to look at that. But with real life football starting Thursday, it's so close. I want to hit on a week 1 NFL prop. I first started wanting to do an MLB because I wanted to keep my streak going after yesterday's prop. But none of those really stood out to me. So I'm just going to kick the can down the road. I'm going to take the Jets at plus 106 on FanDuel to beat the Bills in week 1. I covered AFC East win totals yesterday on Britt's Fantasy Blitz, and this matchup really stood out to me because I think that the Jets take it. The Bills didn't do much to shore up their offensive line, and depending on who you ask, it's one of the worst in the league. And on the flip side of that, you look at what the Jets have done. They signed Quinnen Williams. Sauce Gardner is one of the best corners in the league. And they brought in Aaron Rodgers, of course. Sauce is such a shutdown corner. The last matchup he had with Stephon Diggs, Diggs only had 3 receptions for 37 yards. Get this at plus money while you can, because I guarantee when they sign Dalvin Cook, the odds are going to change in a big way.
That's a good call. That's an interesting one right there. I probably would money line the Jets. I believe that's Monday Night Football to start the season. All right, so I don't really have a bet for today, but I do want to speak about something that took place or some news that happened yesterday. You know what I'm saying? As you know, a lot of people know me. I fashion myself a media critic, and obviously we've seen the past month or so all the stuff that's going on at the worldwide leader and the layoffs and stuff like that. But, the standard is the standard, and I think it's some things you don't mess with. And, for years, Pat Summerall and John Madden was and have been viewed as the best play-by-play team, really, I would say, of all time. Second to that was the tandem of Mike Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson. And Jeff Van Gundy was released last month. And then yesterday, Mark Jackson was fired by ESPN. So just to see that was kind of sad, you know what I'm saying? Been a big Breen fan, a big fan of Van Gundy, a big fan of Mark Jackson. And to see them break up that team that's called every NBA Finals for it seems like the past decade is unfortunate. And I hope Turner does the right thing and put Jeff Van Gundy and Mark Jackson back together on their network.
Yeah, I agree. I think the TNT crew could be pretty wild with some of the talent that's available to join certain broadcasts. And being a big basketball fan that I am, I agree with you, Corey. Like tuning into those games and listening to those three call it, just their chemistry, how they play off one another, and then Breen is just a magician on the mic there with the way he calls and really brings you in to some of those big moments during basketball games for sure. It will be a little different listening into these broadcasts this season. Yeah,
and it's no knock. Listen, I love Doris Burke. She's probably my next favorite. You know what I'm saying? But a team of Breen, Burke, and Doc Rivers, it ain't the same as Breen, Jeff Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson.
Yeah, I kind of wonder who's running their PR marketing team, because signing Pat McAfee to what was it, an $85 million contract just because he has a built-in audience, is what they said, and they had to cut to make room for him. Pat McAfee, what he does is not going to fly on ESPN. So I don't know how well that built-in audience is going to translate over. And cutting some of these long-tenured analysts and commentators who are very beloved, it's not just like they're losing a step, like they're still in the height of their game, was a very bad decision on ESPN's part. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Who doesn't love Mark Jackson? Well, then I don't want to get too deep into the Mark Jackson thing because there's, a lot of people think that, Mark Jackson could be, Mark Jackson is a devout Christian. So a lot of people think that I'm not going to say that that's what the case is here, but, I don't know. I just thought that was pretty, I don't want to say, listen, I don't run their business. You feel what I'm saying? Everybody in the media is going through it right now. Trust me, I know, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, you got to keep your top people, and they don't do talk shows. They broadcast the game.
Right. I think that's kind of where they're going with some of it too. Obviously, we know that ESPN, Disney's losing a lot of money, and they have to figure out who's making the most and where they can make the cuts with the, most affordable next man up replacement, right? So no better way. It's almost like you see with other sports, right? Get rid of your older, higher overpriced talent, bring in the young guys that make a little bit less and hope they develop into the next stars. Then you move on from them and bring in the next crew. So, we'll have to get used to it. We don't have a choice at this point.
And I think losing the Monday Night Football games and having them up for grabs, even though a lot of these are going to go to ABC, which Disney still owns, it took away from the ESPN division of their bottom line. And I think that that's where they're leeching so much money, because they did pay Aikman and Joe Buck so much money, and nobody even watches them. They watch the Manning cast instead. And so that decision as a whole is kind of crazy to me. And it's very unfortunate because there's some very good talent being phased out for no reason.
Yeah, I think probably the Manning cast is better, but I think the main broadcast still gets the sponsors. That's probably why. They're still there, but they even talking about. I heard this would be crazy. They're talking about selling stakes of ESPN to the NBA and NFL. He might as well just be Al Jazeera at that point. I don't like state-sponsored media, and that's exactly what they would become if that was the case.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but that would be insane. The discourse that is currently allowed on these networks, if they, were owned by the league, that would be shut down immediately.
Yeah, that's an issue with the Red Sox. Their ownership group owns, I think, like the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald. So there's almost never anything critical written really about the team in those outlets. And they can, John Henry and the Red Sox ownership group runs the media and the narrative surrounding their team. They own the channel, they own the paper, and they drive what's going on there.
It makes me wonder. I wonder if Dan Snyder had to sell Red Zebra too, because that was a broadcast arm. He probably had to sell that too. Well, hopefully if he did have to sell, hopefully that goes to somebody private and not to Josh Harris.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for today. That was today's edition of A Bettor Morning. Thank you to Corey, Britt, and John. Make sure you check out Moose and Keith at 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you missed any of our shows, you can find them all on our YouTube channel and at bettorsports.com. Have a better